Stavi ovu školjku na uho i čućeš šum oceana.
Kojeg oceana?
Indijskog oceana.
Kako je daleko? Ocean. Zbilja. Stvarno daleko.
Djeco, odlučio sam vam pokloniti ove dvije stvari. Sunčice, tebi ide ova školjka, dušo, a tebi ovaj predmet.
Hvala. A što je to?
To je šum valova s Havaja. Ajde, probaj, okreni jednu stranu. Čuješ? I drugu stranu. I dobiješ šum valova s Havaja. A dobro, što je sad, Silvestre? Što si opet zabrinuta?
Pa, ako sa sunca dolaze toplina i svjetlost, kako to da ne dolazi nikakav zvuk? Kako neobično pitanje.
Izvrsno pitanje. Dolazi zvuk, samo ga mi ne možemo čuti. Da bismo ga čuli, potreban nam je radioteleskop. Sutanci su napravili jedan instrument koji se zvao sunčevo uho. Taj instrument je imao samo jednu vibraciju i jedan zvuk sunca. I kada bi tražili novi dom, oni su uzeli taj instrument i tražili mjesto koje vibrira sa vibracijom i zvukom sunca. I tamo bi se nastanili.
Kako su to radili?
Putovali su i tražili pogodno mjesto za život, a to nije bilo lako. Naviknuti na svoju dobru rijeku, tražili su novu. Kada bi pronašli neku rijeku, postavili bi sunčevo uho i probali da li na tom mjestu može uspostaviti suzvučje sa suncem. Ali nije išlo.
Možda se sunčevo uho pokvarilo.
Razmišljali su čak i o tome. Ali taj instrument bio sveti predmet, nastao u davna vremena. Bilo je čisto savršenstvo vještih ruku majstora koji su poznavali božansku geometriju. Jedino je sunčevo uho preživjelo kataklizmu i morali su mu vjerovati. I zato su tražili dalje.
Ljudi su oduvijek promatrali nebo tražeći znakove koji bi im mogli reći nešto o njihovoj sudbini, a najviše su se oslanjali na motrenje najvećeg nebeskog stanovnika. Hirovi sunca su, kao što je pokazalo malo ledeno doba s kraja 17. stoljeća, mogli promijeniti sudbine čitavih nacija. No kako promatrati sunce i predviđati njegov utjecaj na zemlju kad jedva da možemo gledati direktno u njega?
Because of satellite technology, we now have 24-hour coverage of the surface of the sun, of solar activity, not only to understand what's happening, but to give us warning if there are any flares, if there are any explosions that might send towards the Earth clouds of super hot electrically charged gas, which might affect our communications. We have spacecraft positioned closer to the sun than the Earth, which are monitoring the sun, monitoring the solar wind, and we've even got 2 coordinated spacecraft either side of the Earth's orbit to look in stereo at features happening on the sun. So if there's a particular explosion, we can track the emerging cloud of gas in 3 dimensions and give us several days warning if it's heading towards our way and might cause us communication problems.
U malom španjolskom mjestu Sanlúcar la Mayor kraj Sevilje gradi se najveća europska solarna platforma, koja će, kad bude završena 2013. godine, proizvoditi 300 MW struje i podmirivati potrebe 153.000 domova. To je jedino mjesto na svijetu gdje se na jednom mjestu mogu vidjeti sve postojeće solarne tehnologije, a možda i sama budućnost.
Of course, we are doing now our first steps in solar energy, and they are very promising. Look at this plant. It's the first in the world making this commercial electricity based on this technology of the solar tower. But this is the first one. We have to do many of these plants in order to come on decreasing costs, be competitive with other not renewable energy sources. Concentrating solar power is a way to produce electricity from the sun. But you consider the concentration of the sun energy in order to produce heat, and with this heat you generate steam in order to supply this energy to the steam turbine and produce electricity. So it's a way where you can produce electricity based on thermodynamics concepts. Maybe you are very familiar with another ways of producing solar electricity as photovoltaics. In photovoltaics, you directly expose a solar panel to the sun and you directly get the electricity because of the photoelectric effect. In this kind of technologies, the concentrated solar power, we generate heat, very high temperature heat, in order to supply a very high energy steam to the turbine. This is the basics of the technology. You can consider several concentrated solar power technologies. One of them is this solar tower technology. In the solar tower technology, we concentrate solar radiation on the top of a tower, where we placed a receiver that is basically a boiler, a radiation boiler. We produce the steam and we send it to the turbine to produce the electricity. Concentrating solar power has some advantages in relation to other renewable energy sources, as you can storage energy, you can storage heat for the night, and you can produce electricity also during the nights or even when there is not solar resource. You can also even hybridize a concentrating solar power plant with biomass or with other energy source in order to produce electricity when there is no sun. Imagine today is a spectacular day here in Seville. but there are some other cloudy days or rainy days here in this area. And imagine you have to produce electricity because there is a demand of the society for electricity. Then you could generate steam, burning some kinds of biomass in order to produce the steam and to use the common parts of this facility, like the turbine, the cooling towers, that are the same installations for all conventional power plants. So that's a key point for concentrated solar power. The capacity to generate manageable electricity because of storage systems and because of hybridization. In this sense, we could say that, for example, here in Spain, we have about 200 very sunny and marvelous days like this one today that we can produce electricity only with solar resource. But there are also about 80 days in the year when there is rainy and very cloudy weather, and we could be generating electricity by supplying this steam with biomass or with other energy source. This moment, this solar power plant that we call PS10 in operation is producing 11 megawatts electricity power. That's enough energy to supply electricity for about 5,000 homes. That could be the size of a village similar as the one we have here, Sanlúcar la Mayor, could be a village of this size. So this plant is producing electricity for this population. But for the future, we are trying to make this solar platform growth up to the 300 megawatts by combining several plants. So the next one to come into operation is PS20, is 20 megawatts solar tower power plant. We are in the construction stage of three 50 megawatts parabolic trough power plants that will come into operation in the next 2 or 3 years. So our objective is to be producing here 300 megawatts by the year 2013. That means that when this platform is in fully operation, we will be supplying power for a population very similar to the population that is in the Seville city. So in the future, when the 300 megawatts will be into operation, we will be supplying electricity, let's say, for a size of population like Seville. This is a parabolic trough loop. It's one of the modular units we are installing in our very large plants of 50 megawatts. As a matter of fact, in one of these very large plants, we are using 100 of these units altogether to provide the energy to run the plant. As you can see, there is a pipe in the focal line of the parabolic mirrors where we heat the thermal oil that is flowing through this pipe. So we heat this oil up to 400 degrees in order to generate later the steam that comes to the turbine. That's the working process of this technology, and this is the technology that we are installing in the very large 50 megawatt plants that we are building in this solar platform here in Sanlúcar at this moment. Let's say that the objective is to put the electricity into the grid, so with the combination of several renewable energy sources and some other energy sources that will come into the grid to be able to supply the electricity for the population. But of course, the capacity for concentrated solar power to provide manageable electricity could put very near the process of supplying electricity for whole populations.
20. godina 20. stoljeća područje terapije svjetlom i bojama doživjelo je novi veliki uspon u radu doktora Henrya Rileya Spitlera, koji je razvio znanost sintoniku. Sintonija znači dovođenje u ravnotežu. Dr. Spitler je različite frekvencije boja u tijelo unosio putem oka, smatrajući da svjetlost koja ulazi kroz oči uravnotežuje autonomni živčani sustav i endokrini sustav, te tako poboljšava ravnotežu u tijelu, vid i fiziološke funkcije organizma. 1933. dr. Spitler osnovao je koleđ sintoničke optometrije, na kojem i danas rade liječnici, a pogotovo specijalisti za očni vid iz SAD-a i drugih zemalja.
Spitler's work was very, very interesting. Initially, he did some very interesting experiments with rabbits. He had rabbits that came from the same family, living in cages that were covered with glass of different colors. And what he discovered was the color of light that was entering their eyes was directly affecting their development. How long they lived, how large they grew or how small they grew, how much their bones developed too much or not enough, whether their bowels moved normally or they had loose bowels, whether they developed cataracts or saw clearly. What he discovered is that merely by changing the color of light that was entering the eyes, you could significantly affect the entire balance of the body and its development in a very, very predictable manner. Today, the College of Syntonic Optometry primarily deals with the use of colored light by way of the eyes to affect visual function by balancing the autonomic nervous system and the endocrine system. Spitler's work was based on a very, very interesting theory. He knew that the opposite ends of the spectrum had opposing effects. The red end of the spectrum was very excitatory and stimulated the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which is what puts us into activity and action. The opposite end of the spectrum, the blue end of the spectrum, stimulated the parasympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system, which had to do with the body rebuilding itself. Because the autonomic nervous system, these two branches are constantly working in relationship to one another, by the application of light, you could bring the body into balance, not only affecting physiological function, but specifically affecting visual function, which would improve the body's guidance system and the performance of the individual. Spitler developed a very, very precise theory. Since red was excitatory, blue was sedative, and green was the balancer, he said if you take the balancing energies of green, combine it with the stimulatory energy of yellow, you could excite the body when it had suffered from a disease or a state of imbalance for a long period of time. I began using light and color while I was still a student getting my medical degree in 1971. I was told that there were different techniques where you use specific colors in front of the eyes to improve the way the eyes worked and specifically to improve vision. At that time, we were using red filters and yellow filters and finding that you could improve individuals who had what we called a lazy eye, a condition where one eye didn't see as well as the other. But my work with light and color didn't really start to take place until 1975 and 1976, when I began doing some experiments with myself to see if I could reduce my eyeglass prescription and maybe eventually be able to see well again without my glasses. I gradually reduced the prescription in my glasses. I started doing exercises with my eyes and brain in late 1975. And after about 8 or 9 months of doing this work, I was able to see 300% better than I was before. It was a rather profound and miraculous experience for me because I was led to believe that this was impossible when I was going to school. But now it is 32 years later, and I have never had a pair of glasses on my face since that day in 1976. I'm almost 61 years old. I still see very well at distance as well as for reading. So for many years, I monitored the body of my patients while they were looking at different frequencies of light or different colors, and I realized that certain colors allowed them to be in a state of peace and tranquility, and other colors made them very nervous, very anxious, and actually brought up fear and memory from the past, sometimes that they weren't even aware of, that happened very, very early in their life. And so I developed an entire system of using light and color that was not based on treating diseases or condition, but was based on balancing the receptivity of the individual. So rather than being comfortable with some colors and uncomfortable with others, the person became comfortable with all the colors. And what was interesting is, when the person became comfortable with all the colors that they used to be uncomfortable with, they simultaneously became comfortable with the aspects of life that used to upset them, trigger them, and create stress in their life.
To im je bila nova domovina?
Čini se da da.
I to je sretan kraj priče.
Ne.
Sunce je u svemu što dišemo, u svemu što jedemo ili pijemo, u svakoj sekundi topline i svjetlosti. Stoga ako nešto ili nekoga treba slaviti, sunce je najbolji izbor. U drevnoj prošlosti, u vrijeme dok su duhovi šuma, rijeka i planina još uvijek živjeli zajedno s ljudima, ritam života bio je ritam sunca. Izmjena dana i noći, izmjena godišnjeg doba, stari su narodi znali kome treba za sve to zahvaliti. Posebno važan trenutak u njihovim životima bio je zimski suncostaj. Proslava zimskog solsticija danas je nestala ili se prikrila pod drugim imenima u drugim religijama, ali ne svugdje. Neke tradicije stare tisućama godina preživjele su do danas. U Meksiku su ih sačuvali potomci Azteka, nositelji tradicije Tezcatlipoca. Dane kada sunce zastane, oni obilježavaju ceremonijom u drevnom kompleksu hramova i piramida, u gradu Xochicalcu.
Yo pertenezco a la continua tradición Tezcatlipoca. Es una tradición que se ha mantenido por más de 40.000 años. Esta tradición es parte de las 4 grandes escuelas que han ayudado a formar las diferentes culturas que ha habido en este territorio.
En esas tierras había 2 federaciones, que era la Federación de la Náhuac, que iba desde Alaska hasta Nicaragua. Esos eran los límites. Alaska significa Axcancanáhuac, donde comienza la náhuac, y Nicancanáhuac, donde termina la náhuac. Desde Alaska hasta Nicaragua era una sola federación de muchos pueblos, ya sea el pueblo navajo, apache, sioux, maya, azteca, quiché, todos los diferentes pueblos estaban unidos en esta federación que iba desde Alaska hasta Nicaragua. Esa era una federación. Y la otra federación era la federación del Tehuantzintlóyotl, que era la federación de los incas, en donde estaban toda la parte de los cunas, los incas, el Amazonas y todas las tribus o pueblos de esta zona que iba desde el Perú hasta Punta de Fuego en Chile.
El uso es una ciudad que fue una universidad superior. Esta universidad superior de tipo cosmopolita, en la que culturas de diferentes pueblos venían aquí a aprender los conocimientos desarrollados por esas 4 tradiciones de las que he hablado. La tradición de Tezcatlipoca, la tradición de Quetzalcóatl, la tradición de Huitzilopochtli, la tradición de Yaocíhuatl. ¿Sí?
Los constructores de Xochicalco literalmente cortaron el cerro para sobre estas grandes esplanadas colocar sus templos, sus palacios, los juegos de pelota y los espacios sagrados como esta plaza donde nos encontramos. Todo ello con un diseño cósmico, en donde el hombre mesoamericano veía el cielo para alinear, orientar las estructuras con un simbolismo muy preciso. Para, por ejemplo, en el caso de esta plaza, ver el traslado del sol durante los 365 días del año y con ello tener un calendario observacional en el horizonte.
Xochicalco, yo te comentaba que Xochicalco en este tiempo fue una universidad, una de las mejores universidades que existía en ese tiempo. Y había intercambios con la otra federación, había intercambios de estudiantes. Los mejores estudiantes de esta federación, desde Alaska hasta Nicaragua, venían aquí y se hacía un intercambio con la otra federación, que la otra federación, los mejores estudiantes venían de la parte inca, de lo que actualmente sería Machu Picchu, que era la otra universidad. Son los 2 puntos similares, que eran 2 escuelas específicamente para estudiar todo lo que es astronomía y las partes de ciencias exactas, matemáticas, física. Aquí se estudiaban.
La Plaza de la Estela de los 2 glifos, que es el lugar donde nos encontramos, fue diseñada para observar la salida del sol en ciertos momentos del año, porque en estos momentos se celebraban ceremonias muy importantes, como cuáles: el equinoccio de primavera y los solsticios de verano e invierno, que marcaban festividades dentro del ciclo agrícola muy importantes.
Hace 13.747 años, nosotros fuimos testigos de un momento en el que la Tierra cambió y se generó un gran desastre. Esta catástrofe que sucedió, de acuerdo a nuestras tradiciones, es cuando la Luna se acercó a la Tierra por primera ocasión y la jala, la empuja durante 5 días, creando una gran oscuridad y al mismo tiempo una serie de terremotos y grandes olas que se movieron para diferentes lugares. Nosotros, para poder salvarnos, nos ocultamos en una cueva y ahí nos mantuvimos hasta que pasó esta parte, y cuando volvió el sol a aparecer, apareció por un lado diferente. Ese lado diferente es el punto en el que se encuentra en el solsticio de invierno. Así que a partir de esa fecha, cada año nosotros regresamos a los lugares a donde fuimos testigos de lo que sucedió, en lugar a donde apareció el sol nuevamente, para que nosotros podamos observar que sigue estando en su misma posición. Anteriormente, por eso había gigantismo entre los animales, entre las plantas. Crecían mucho las plantas y los animales porque la luna no estaba junto a nosotros. Pero cuando sucedió esto hace 13.747 años, entonces la Tierra cambió, mucha gente murió, muchos animales murieron. Pasaron años para que se pudiera restaurar, tuvimos que buscar muchas formas. La cueva nos ayudó mucho porque era agua que estaba filtrada por tal vez miles de años, y esa agua no estaba contaminada, y esa agua nos permitía beber de ella y mantenernos a nosotros como seres vivos. Mucho más atrás, este asteroide, que es ahora la Luna, que es nuestro satélite, había pasado cerca de la Tierra en otras 3 ocasiones. Y cada ocasión dejaba partículas de ella. Nosotros decimos que era una guerrera que pasaba y lanzaba una flecha y pegaba en la Tierra y toda la faz de la Tierra cambiaba. Y esto, tenemos esa memoria, que sucedió en total 4 ocasiones. Estos elementos en las piernas de la gente que danza corresponde al sonido que nosotros escuchamos que la Luna producía antes de ser nuestro satélite. Nosotros en nuestra lengua le llamamos coyol xauqui. Coyol significa cascabel, ¿sí?, esta campana, y xauqui es la arena brillante. Y esta arena brillante que produce este sonido, como esto, era tremendamente fuerte, que venía hacia la Tierra, ¿sí? Y es un sonido, pues obviamente ensordecedor, y que causaba un terrible miedo.
Los gorros simbolizan los rayos del sol y cada uno de ellos está trayendo esa energía hacia aquí.
Posteriormente a esto, sucede que a la Luna la detiene el Sol y produce una descarga electromagnética que la apaga y la pone a rotar alrededor de la Tierra. Cuando se hace esta gran descarga, nosotros a esa descarga le llamamos xiucohuatl, la serpiente brillante. Y se dice que fue el sonido más estruendoso que el ser humano haya podido escuchar en momento alguno y que cubrió totalmente la Tierra durante mucho tiempo. Es para recordar precisamente el momento en el que esta catástrofe sucedió. Y cada año damos el ciclo para poder observar que seguimos teniendo el mismo movimiento y que se sigue manteniendo esa estabilidad que se perdió hace 13.747 años. Toda la ceremonia habla de ello. Incluso el juego que los niños hacen en esta ceremonia representan el momento que el sol antiguo, ¿sí?, el muchacho que está vestido de negro es el sol antiguo, y él tiene en su mano los alimentos. Estos alimentos está rodeado por los planetas. Uno de ellos es Venus, nosotros le llamamos Tlahuizcalpantecuhtli, ¿sí? Para nosotros es importante como punto de referencia, y la Tierra. y están dando vueltas alrededor del muchacho, ¿sí? Y la niña que tiene la cara pintada de blanco, ¿sí?, corre y mueve a estos molestándolos. Al hacer este ejercicio, recordamos precisamente a ese cometa, a ese asteroide que viene y rompe el equilibrio que se estaba teniendo. Los jóvenes son la representación del sol nuevo, y entonces por eso capturan la bolsa con la fruta para que ellos puedan repartirla, y es un juego en el que recordamos ese suceso. Parte de la danza también, los momentos en los que saludamos, es agradecer que nuevamente tenemos luz, que ya no hay oscuridad, ¿sí?, porque lo que vivimos nosotros fue un periodo de oscuridad también. Venimos 3 días. Venimos el día antes del solsticio, venimos el día del solsticio y el día después del solsticio, porque así vemos cómo estaba el sol antes del solsticio, cómo se mueve el sol el día del solsticio y cómo regresa el sol después del solsticio.
Eso es lo que venimos a festejar aquí, la vida, el poder continuar con vida dentro de en este planeta.
Mnogo je astronoma dugi niz godina radilo na tome da otkrije temperaturu Sunca. Prvi korak napravili su njemački astronom Einar Hertzsprung i engleski astronom Henry Norris Russell kada su otkrili da postoji veza između zvijezdine mase i njezina sjaja. Zvijezda veličine našeg Sunca ne može imati proizvoljan sjaj, već točno određen. To je bio prvi put da su astronomi utvrdili da postoji određeni red, određeni zakon, određena unutarnja struktura Sunca. Prema tome, što god proizvodi unutarnju energiju Sunca mora poštivati određene zakone. Najvažnije pitanje bilo je otkud uopće Suncu ta energija.
In 1926, Sir Arthur Eddington, a very famous theorist, wrote a landmark paper about the internal energy of the sun, and he determined the rules the sun had to follow, no matter what source of energy it had. And following that, he turned then to the nuclear scientists and say, obviously the center of the sun is very hot. He thought it was 25 million degrees. What happens to hydrogen? What happens to hydrogen when it gets so hot? And it was the nuclear scientists who were then trying to work out how the atom works, how to get energy from the atom, both for peaceful means and for military purposes, who solved the riddle of the sun's energy, because they realized that when you get hydrogen at temperatures of 15 or 25 million degrees, you get a nuclear reaction taking place that forces atoms of hydrogen together, and they make atoms of helium and liberate a little amount of energy in the process, and that is the origin of starlight. The sun is a masterpiece of physics in action. The energy is created deep in its core, where the temperature is 15 million degrees, and there nuclear reactions take place which force hydrogen atoms together to make helium atoms, and in doing so you create a little bit of energy. And how much energy is the sun producing? Well, every second it liberates the equivalent of 32,000 million atomic explosions. The greatest explosions we've ever seen on planet Earth, if you had 32,000 million of them every second, then that is equivalent to the energy output of the sun. And all this energy is created in the interior of the sun, and it comes out initially by X-rays. And this material, this energy, diffuses out towards the surface. And in fact, if the center of the sun, if the energy production in the sun was to stop, it would take over 500,000 years for us to notice any difference by looking at the surface of the sun. If the center of the sun was to get hotter than it is, then it would cause the sun to expand. The radiation from the center would push out and make the sun slightly larger. But in doing so, it would expend energy, and that energy would completely compensate for the increase in temperature at the center. If the temperature at the center went down, the sun would contract, and if things contract, they usually get hotter, and that would then restore the balance. So the sun is a masterwork of physics. The laws of energy production at its core and the energy transfer from its center to the surface keep this star in almost perfect balance for 4 or 5 billion years while it's on the main sequence.
Pa što je onda bilo? Kakva je bila ta nova domovina?
Nazvali su ju zemlja ptica. Ali kad su počeli istraživati, otkrili su...
Što? Što su otkrili?
Da nisu sami. A kad su je krenuli istraživati, otkrili su da su došli na tuđu zemlju. Prvi puta sreli su neki drugi narod, potpuno drugačiji od njih. Srećom, miroljubiv. Djeca sunca susrela su narod plodne zemlje. Iscrpljeni i gladni, sutanci su u znak poštovanja mogli pokloniti samo svoj simbol sunca. Narod plodne zemlje uzvratio im je onim što je pridošlicama tada bilo najpotrebnije, gostoprimstvo. I tako su sutanci konačno dobili svoj novi dom. Neko su vrijeme živjeli pored naroda plodne zemlje i vremenom se stopili s njima razmjenjujući znanja i običaje, donijevši sa sobom zvijezdoznanstvo i pismo od čvorova.
A što je bilo sa sunčevim uhom?
Sunčevo uho su ipak zadržali samo za sebe. Vremenom su običaji shlapili i ostala je samo mala grupa posvećenika i čuvara znanja koja ga je čuvala tisućama godina. Možda, skriveno, postoji negdje i danas. Bila je to priča o drevnom narodu Sutan. A sad idem upaliti svjetionik.
A što je značilo Sutan?
To je značilo ono što smo svi mi. Djeca sunca.
Baš mi je žao što je priča završila. Meni je drago što ima sretan kraj. A mi možemo sagraditi grad sunca iz početka. Da, još stignemo. Idemo!
The sun has a very long future. If the sun was going to live 24 hours, it is only late mid-morning. So most of the sun's life is ahead of it. But what will happen in about 4 billion years' time is that the sun will start to run out of hydrogen fuel at its core. It burns hydrogen and it turns that into starlight. And that fuel won't last forever. And in 4 billion years' time, that fuel will start to run out. And the sun will have to organize its interior so that it can burn other types of nuclear fuel. And it will go on to burn helium. But the problem is that there isn't much helium around. And then it will try and burn oxygen. And there is even less of oxygen. So that it will quickly run through the available fuel sources at the end of its life. And in 4 billion years' time, it will change from being a yellow star, what we call a yellow dwarf star. It will expand quite dramatically to become a red giant. And in doing so, it will swallow up Mercury and Venus, the closest planets to the sun. It will completely destroy them. The Earth will be saved. It won't quite get to the Earth, but the Earth will be baked dry as a cinder and will have no water on it at all. And the sun will remain as a red giant for perhaps 300 or 400 million years. And a very different type of star from the type it is today. It'll be brighter because it'll be much larger, but it's really just at the end of its life when it's a red giant. And then even the small amount of nuclear fuel it has left will not be able to save it. It will then shrink very rapidly to become a cosmic cinder, what we call a white dwarf, which is an object about the mass of our sun, but only the size of our own planet. And the white dwarf then will get cooler and cooler and cooler, and over hundreds of millions, billions of years, it will be essentially a chunk of rock in space. And if it doesn't hit anything, if it doesn't come across anything, it will stay like that forever. A cosmic cinder floating through the universe, a fraction, a pale reflection of its former glory. And that's the fate of the sun.
Bila je ovo priča o suncu. Samo jedna od mnogih kakve čovječanstvo priča od početka svijeta. I kakve će pričati dokle god bude ikoga da svako jutro pozdravi našu zvijezdu kada se pojavi iznad horizonta. Jer kakav bi to svijet bio bez priča? A bez sunca nikoga ne bi ni bilo da ih priča.
But is our scientific story of the sun true? Well, in Brittany, the sailors and fishermen around San Malo say that on a clear, quiet night, you can hear the sun set, almost like a red-hot poker thrust into water. You can hear the sizzle as the sun sets into the great ocean every night. Sometimes I wonder if that's the truth.